If the Book of Enoch is right, the first thing your soul sees after death is not a cloud. It is not a tunnel. It is not even the final judgment. It is a mountain in the west, carved open with 4 hollow chambers for the dead. One chamber has a spring of light. One chamber holds sinners who escape justice on earth. One chamber contains a voice that has been screaming since the first murder in human history. And one chamber is so dark that the souls inside are not simply waiting to be punished. They are waiting to find out whether they will ever be raised at all. That is the afterlife map Enoch was shown. Not a metaphor, not a comfort story, a location, a holding place, a system already built before you die. According to First Enoch chapter 22, every human soul is taken first to this hidden place, sorted into one of its chambers, and held there until the day of judgment. That means death is not the end of the story. Death is the moment the soul is delivered into custody. Tonight we follow Enoch through the chambers of the dead, and the last chamber is the reason this chapter still feels forbidden. Start with the part most people never think about. The Bible tells you that Enoch did not die. Genesis says Enoch walked with God, and then he was not, because God took him. That is one of the strangest lines in Scripture. No deathbed, no grave, no body, no burial. Enoch simply disappears from the world of the living. The ordinary Bible gives you the disappearance, but it does not give you the journey. First Enoch claims to preserve the journey. It says Enoch was taken beyond the places ordinary men can see. He saw the storehouses of the winds. He saw the gates of the heavenly lights. He saw the prison prepared for the fallen angels. He saw the cosmic machinery that Genesis only hints at. Then he was taken to the place where the dead are kept. That detail is important. Enoch is the perfect witness to the afterlife because he is the man who crossed the boundary without dying. He can see what the dead see without becoming one of them. He can stand at the doorway and come back with the map. And the map he brings back is not simple. Modern religion often turns death into a straight line. You die, you go up or down, you are saved or lost. It is clean, it is easy to preach, it is easy to paint. But First Enoch gives something colder than a straight line. It gives a waiting system. The dead are not merely gone, they are gathered. The dead are not merely remembered, they are held. The dead are not merely sleeping in some vague poetic sense, they are placed. That one word should disturb you. Placed. Because if a soul can be placed, then death has architecture. If death has architecture, then someone built it. If someone built it, then every chamber has a purpose. And Enoch is about to ask what that purpose is. The journey begins at a great mountain in the west. In the ancient imagination, the west was not just a direction, it was where the sun disappeared, the edge where light sank out of the world, the place where day seemed to die every evening. So when Enoch is taken westward, the geography itself is already preaching death. He sees a mountain made of hard rock. Inside the mountain are hollow places, deep places, smooth places, separate places. Not one cave, 4 chambers, and these chambers are not described as random holes in the earth. They are prepared spaces, places made to receive something. Enoch asks the angel what they are. The answer is the key to the whole journey. The angel tells him these hollow places were created so that the spirits of the souls of the dead might gather there. They were made so that all the souls of the children of men could be kept there until the day of their judgment. Do not make that softer than it is. All the souls, kings, children, prophets, murderers, mothers, priests, soldiers, victims, liars, the forgotten, the famous, the buried, everyone. First Enoch does not describe death as immediate disappearance. It describes death as transfer. The body goes into the ground, but the spirit is taken into a prepared region of custody. The first stop is not the final throne. The first stop is the mountain, and the mountain has doors. Now make the journey personal. Imagine the last breath has already happened. The room around the body is still full of living people. Someone is crying. Someone is touching a cold hand. Someone is trying to understand how a person who spoke yesterday can be silent today. But in Enoch's map, the most important movement is not happening in that room. It is happening somewhere else. The body remains where the living can see it. The soul is taken where the living cannot follow. That is the terror of this passage. It splits death in two. There is the death the family sees, and there is the death the soul experiences. The family sees a bed, a grave, a stone, and a name. The soul sees the mountain. This is why the Book of Enoch does not feel like ordinary religious comfort. It does not begin by telling you not to be afraid. It begins by showing you a place that already exists. The dead do not negotiate with the mountain. They arrive. The dead do not choose which doorway looks best. They are received. The dead do not bring their version of the story. They bring what they are. And that is why the 4 chambers are more frightening than a single pit. A single pit only says some souls are punished. 4 chambers say the unseen world knows the difference between kinds of souls. The righteous are not treated like the hidden sinner. The hidden sinner is not treated like the murdered victim. The murdered victim is not treated like the deepest transgressor. The mountain has categories. That means heaven's record is not blurry. It is precise. This is also why journey is the right word, because Enoch does not merely hear a doctrine. He moves through a sequence. He approaches the west. He sees the mountain. He sees the hollows. He asks the angel. Then the chambers are revealed one by one, and each chamber forces a worse question than the last. The first question is simple. Where do the righteous wait? The second is sharper. Where do the guilty hide when death removes every hiding place? The third is unbearable. Where does murdered blood keep speaking? The fourth is the one that stays in your chest. What kind of soul is left in darkness when the others are raised? If you want this channel to keep opening the manuscripts that ordinary sermons skip, subscribe to the Buried Testament now. This one is not a soft Bible lesson. This is the map of where the dead wait. Now Enoch looks into the first chamber. This is the chamber people want to imagine for themselves, the chamber of the righteous. But even this chamber is stranger than comfort, because it is not paradise in the final sense. It is not the completed world. It is not the resurrection body. It is still inside the mountain of the dead. The righteous are safe, but they are still waiting. That is the first shock. In the first chamber there is light, but the light does not come from the sun. It does not come from torches. It does not come from fire. It comes from water. Enoch sees a spring, a fountain, a source of water that shines in the darkness. Around it are the souls of the righteous, held in peace until the appointed time. Picture the scene like Enoch sees it. The outside of the mountain is black stone at the edge of the dying sun. The inside is cold, carved, and silent. Then, deep in the rock, a spring glows with its own light. The water moves, but there is no wind. It shines, but there is no flame. Souls gather around it as if the water itself is a promise that the grave will not have the final word. That is powerful, but it is also terrifying, because the righteous are not wandering free. They are kept in a chamber. Even mercy has walls. Even rest has a holding place. Even the best dead are still waiting for something that has not happened yet. This is why Enoch 22 hits harder than a normal heaven story. It does not just say good people are comforted. It shows you the holding room where their souls are preserved until the final judgment. The righteous have light, but the mountain still has them. And once you understand that, the second chamber becomes much darker, because not every soul in the mountain is near the spring. The angel shows Enoch another division. This chamber is for sinners who died without being punished during their lives. That sentence should make every hidden thing feel heavier. These are not people who were exposed on earth. They were not necessarily dragged before a court. They did not always lose their reputation. Some of them died honored. Some died wealthy. Some died with prayers spoken over them by people who never knew what they had done. Their secrets survived every human witness, but their secrets did not survive death. That is the terror of the second chamber. It is the chamber for the unpunished. The living world can be fooled. Files can disappear. Witnesses can be frightened. Families can protect a name. Money can buy silence. Power can turn guilt into rumor. A man can be buried with a clean stone over his grave while the truth rots with the people he harmed. But First Enoch says death does not delete the record. It moves the record. The soul that escaped judgment on earth is held in a chamber where the earth can no longer protect it. No reputation enters that room. No lawyer enters that room. No applause enters that room. No funeral speech enters that room. Only the soul, only the record, only the thing the person became. That is why this chamber is not just punishment, it is exposure. The second chamber says your public life is not the final testimony about you. The mountain keeps a better archive. Now understand why that would make this book dangerous. If First Enoch is right, the institution does not own the record. The priest does not own the record. The family does not own the record. The empire does not own the record. The mountain already has a place for the hidden sinner before any human authority can rewrite the story. That is a brutal idea, and Enoch is not finished, because the third chamber is not about hidden sinners, it is about victims. This is the chamber that turns Genesis into something much more frightening. Enoch hears a sound, not a symbol, not an idea, a sound. From inside the mountain, a voice is crying out. The dead are not all silent. One of them is still speaking. Enoch asks the angel whose voice it is. The angel answers that it is the spirit of Abel, whom Cain murdered. Abel, the first victim, the first blood spilled by human violence, the first grave made by a brother's hand. In Genesis chapter 4, after Cain murders Abel, God says the voice of Abel's blood cries out from the ground. Most people read that line as poetry. First Enoch reads it as location. The blood cries out because the soul is crying out. The ground has a voice because under the world of the living there is a chamber where murdered blood becomes testimony. Now the first murder is no longer just an ancient story. It is an ongoing sound. Abel is not merely remembered, Abel is heard. He is not just dead, he is testifying from the chamber, and that changes the way you read the whole Bible. When Genesis says blood cries out, Enoch shows where the cry goes. When Revelation later shows the souls of the slain under the altar crying out, asking how long until their blood is avenged, it is the same moral universe. The murdered dead do not vanish into silence. They wait, conscious enough to cry, conscious enough to ask for justice, conscious enough to know that the verdict has not yet arrived. That is not gentle theology. That is a courtroom built under creation. The third chamber is the witness room of the dead. It holds the ones whose lives were stolen. It holds the voices history tried to bury. It holds every cry that the living world could not answer. And Abel is the first voice in the room. This is where the journey becomes impossible to ignore. Because if Abel's blood still speaks, then murder is not over when the murderer dies. Injustice is not finished when the newspaper stops writing about it. A body hidden in the ground does not mean the case is closed. The dead can still testify. The chamber can still speak. The mountain can still accuse. That is why First Enoch chapter 22 is not just an afterlife passage. It is a warning to every person who thinks time can bury guilt. Time can hide evidence from men. It cannot hide evidence from the mountain. Now the angel has shown Enoch 3 divisions: the righteous near the spring, the unpunished sinners held in exposure, the murdered souls crying for justice. But the 4th chamber is worse because it is harder to explain. And that is exactly why it works as terror. Before we open it, you need to know why the chapter matters historically. First, Enoch was not born in a vacuum. Enochic writings circulated in ancient Jewish communities before Christianity became an imperial religion. Aramaic fragments of Enoch were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls at Qumran. The Ethiopian Church preserved the complete book in its biblical tradition. The New Testament letter of Jude refers to Enoch, the 7th from Adam, and quotes a prophecy associated with this Enochic tradition. That means the book was not a random medieval ghost story. It belonged to the world that shaped early Jewish and Christian imagination about angels, judgment, demons, resurrection, and the hidden realm. So when later readers encounter the rich man and Lazarus in Luke chapter 16, they are not hearing a story about a vague cartoon afterlife. They are hearing a world where the dead can be divided before the final resurrection. One man is comforted, one man is tormented. Between them is a gulf that cannot be crossed. The brothers of the rich man are still alive on earth, which means final judgment has not yet ended history. Yet the dead are already conscious, already separated, already experiencing consequences. That is the same shape as Enoch, one realm of the dead, different regions, different conditions. The waiting before the final day. Revelation uses the same shape when the souls under the altar cry out and are told to wait a little longer. Again, the dead are conscious. Again, victims ask for justice. Again, the final judgment has not yet arrived. Again, the dead wait somewhere. The Bible kept fragments of the map. First Enoch gives you the floor plan, and a floor plan is harder to control than a fragment. Because once a text says there are chambers, every listener asks the forbidden question, which chamber receives me? And that question is the real engine of this chapter, not curiosity, self-recognition. A person can hear about angels and keep distance. A person can hear about ancient manuscripts and stay detached. A person can even hear about judgment and imagine it belongs to someone worse. But a chamber is different. A chamber feels assigned. It forces the listener to imagine arrival, not theology in a book. Arrival, the moment after the pulse stops, the moment after the last human voice fades, the moment after every mask falls away, and the soul stands before a place that does not care what people called you. That is why this passage lodges in the mind. You do not just want information, you want to know which room comes next. The first room gives relief. The second room removes excuses. The third room proves the victims are still heard. Then the fourth room threatens the deepest fear of all, being forgotten by the rising. This is also where the Enochic map becomes different from a simple hell sermon. A simple hell sermon often jumps straight to fire. First Enoch slows the terror down. It makes you walk past mercy, exposure, accusation, and then exclusion. That order matters. Mercy proves God preserves the righteous. Exposure proves hidden sin survives death. Accusation proves victims are not erased. Exclusion proves that some darkness is not just a place you enter, it is a condition you become. That is the coldest idea in the chapter. The chambers do not merely hold souls, They reveal souls. The light chamber reveals a soul capable of rest. The hidden sinner chamber reveals a soul whose public life was a lie. The victim chamber reveals a soul whose blood became testimony. The fourth chamber reveals a soul so joined to corruption that the text itself becomes difficult to read without dread. That is the question this chapter plants in the mind, and it never lets it go. Now we open the fourth chamber. This is the one that makes the journey feel less like comfort and more like dread. The text describes a final division connected with the deepest kind of transgression. Ancient translations differ in wording, and scholars argue over the precise category, but the fear inside the passage is not hard to understand. These souls are not in the light. They are not the righteous waiting in peace. They are not the murdered crying for justice. They are not simply the unpunished sinners waiting for their first reckoning. They are set apart in a darker condition. And the most disturbing idea is this: they are not raised from there in the same way. Do not rush past that line. This is the fourth chamber's real terror. Not pain, not fire, not monsters. Exclusion. Being left inside the mountain while the doors open for others. Being held in a darkness so severe that the normal hope of rising becomes uncertain in the description itself. Being so attached to corruption that the holding place begins to feel like the verdict. That is why this chamber is more frightening than a simple punishment scene. Punishment at least proves that the case is active. Punishment means the judge is dealing with you. But exclusion is colder. Exclusion says the door may not open when the others are called. Imagine the mountain on the final day. The chamber of light begins to open. The righteous are brought out. The voice of Abel is answered. The hidden sinners are summoned to judgment. Then the fourth chamber remains black. No spring, no witness, no comfort. Only souls that became so bound to darkness that the chamber itself seems to keep them. That is the nightmare Enoch places in the mind. Not that the dead are punished, that some dead are kept. That is why the word journey matters. The Book of Enoch does not merely describe what happens after death. It describes a journey through chambers, and each chamber reveals a different truth about the soul. The first chamber says, righteousness is preserved. The second says, hidden sin is stored. The third says, murdered blood keeps speaking. The fourth says, the deepest darkness is being left where no human hand can open the door. 4 chambers, 1 mountain, every soul waiting. Now step back and see the larger pattern. In the ordinary Bible, Sheol can sound vague. The grave, the pit, the place of the dead, a shadow realm where life is diminished. But Second Temple Jewish literature begins to sharpen the picture. The dead are not only below, they are sorted. Angels have assignments. Spirits have places. Watchers have prisons. Souls have chambers. Judgment is not just an event at the end of time. Judgment has infrastructure. That word is important. Infrastructure. First Enoch presents the unseen world as organized. The fallen angels are chained in their own place. The dead are held in chambers. The stars have paths. The winds have storehouses. The heavenly lights have gates. This is not a universe of vague spiritual feelings. It is a universe with locks, chambers, paths, gates, prisons, and appointed times. And Enoch is the human witness who saw the system. That is why this book keeps coming back. People are not only curious about Enoch because it was left outside many Bibles. They are curious because it answers questions the shorter Bible verses leave burning. Where was Enoch taken? Where are the watchers chained? Where do the dead wait? Why does Abel's blood cry out? Why does Luke show the dead separated before the final judgment? Why does Revelation show slain souls speaking before the end? First, Enoch does not answer gently. It answers with a map. And the map says that after death, the soul is not free to invent its own destination. The soul is received by a structure already waiting for it. That is the central bomb of the whole passage. The chambers are not created when you arrive. They are already there. Your death does not build your chamber. Your life reveals which chamber was waiting. That is why the chapter feels so personal. It does not let you study the dead from a distance. It turns the map around and aims it at the living. If the righteous are preserved near the spring, what kind of soul can endure that light? If hidden sinners are exposed in a chamber, what hidden thing follows a person into death? If Abel still cries out, whose blood, pain, or betrayal is still speaking before God? If the fourth chamber holds the deepest transgressors in exclusion, what does it mean for a soul to become unfit even for the ordinary hope of rising? These are not academic questions. They are survival questions. And this is where the buried testament has to be honest. Different Christian traditions will interpret the afterlife differently. Some will treat Enoch as valuable ancient literature, but not canon. Some will treat it as scripture. Some will see chapter 22 as background to New Testament imagery. Some will reject it as outside their Bible. But none of that makes the chapter weak. The chapter is strong because it shows the afterlife imagination that existed around the world of the Bible. It shows what ancient readers could picture when they heard about Sheol, Hades, judgment, resurrection, and the souls of the slain. It gives the unseen realm walls, and walls are harder to ignore than ideas. That is why this story belongs here. The buried testament is not here to make every hidden book equal to the Bible. It is here to open the buried records and ask why they were powerful enough to survive. First Enoch survived because it saw too much. It gave names to the watchers. It explained the origin of forbidden knowledge. It described the spirits of the giants. It mapped the prison of fallen angels. And in chapter 22, it walked Enoch into the mountain where human souls wait. That is not a small claim. That is an entire supernatural geography. And the Western Church largely lost it. Not all at once. Not always by a single dramatic burning. Often in a quieter way. A book stops being copied. A text stops being read. A map stops being taught. A generation passes, then another. Soon the believers still know fragments, but the floor plan is gone. The fragments remain in Genesis. Abel's blood cries out. The fragments remain in Luke. The dead are divided by a gulf. The fragments remain in Revelation. The slain souls cry for justice. But First Enoch keeps the chamber doors in view. It says the cry has a place. It says the division has a place. It says the waiting has a place. The map was not destroyed. It was buried. And tonight you saw why. Because the map does not flatter the living. It does not let anyone say, I will think about death later. It says the mountain is already there. It says the chambers are already carved. It says the spring is already shining. It says Abel is already crying. It says the hidden sinner already has nowhere to hide. It says the fourth darkness already waits behind a door no human hand can open. That is not generic religion. That is biblical dread. Now listen carefully to the final sequence. Death, custody, sorting, waiting, judgment. That is the order First Enoch shows. The final judgment is still coming, but the soul does not wait in nothingness. It waits in a place fitted to what it has become. The righteous wait in light. The hidden guilty wait in exposure. The murdered wait as witnesses. The deepest transgressors wait in a darkness that may not open like the others. And all of them wait for the same day. The day the chambers are opened. That is the part almost nobody preaches. The chambers are temporary, but temporary does not mean harmless. A jail cell before trial is temporary. A sealed evidence room is temporary. A locked tomb before resurrection is temporary. But while you are inside it, temporary is the whole world. That is the terror of the waiting place. It is not forever, but it is real. And for the dead inside the mountain, it is all they know until the judgment arrives. This is why Enoch's journey matters more than curiosity. He did not only see where the dead go, he saw that nothing moral disappears. Righteousness does not disappear. It is preserved near the spring. Secret sin does not disappear. It is held for judgment. Murdered blood does not disappear. It becomes a voice. Deep corruption does not disappear. It becomes a darkness that keeps the soul. The mountain is the memory of God carved into stone. That is the strongest way to understand the chambers. They are not just rooms, they are memory. The first remembers faithfulness. The second remembers hidden guilt. The third remembers blood. The fourth remembers corruption so deep that the soul itself becomes a prisoner of what it loved. And Enoch, the man who did not die, stood before that memory while still breathing. That is why his witness is terrifying, because he looked at the place you only see after your last breath, and he returned with a warning. The warning is not merely that death comes. Everyone knows death comes. The warning is that death has order, death has doors, death has chambers, and you do not decide what the chamber means after you arrive. Your life has already been speaking. Drop chambers in the comments if you want this channel to keep opening the books they buried, and subscribe to the Buried Testament, because the next record goes even lower. First Enoch does not only describe where human souls wait, it also describes the prison of the angels who corrupted the earth before the flood. That place is not the chamber of the righteous. It is not the chamber of Abel. It is not the holding room for ordinary human dead. It is older, deeper, built for beings who were never supposed to die like men. The dead wait in chambers, the watchers wait in chains, and Enoch saw both doors.